Welcome to the latest episode of Branding the Experience, where we discuss ways how we can create environments where employees actually want to come to work and customers want to keep coming back. I am Ken Bader, your host for Branding the Experience, and our subject today, at least look like you care. Now, I say this tongue in cheek, but I know that in the news lately, it's all about the labor shortage and the fact that restaurants and other retail are just ramping up after the pandemic, and they can't find good people, they can't get good people back. Uh, so many different issues. People that used to be in that particular industry in customer service, found other gigs or just decided they don't want to do it anymore. Whatever the reason being, I keep experiencing number one, and we'll get back to that, but also reading, hearing, and seeing in all the news of what an issue retail is today and how it's struggling to offer a branded experience to customers. And I get it to a certain extent. Maybe I'm a little bit too harsh, but at the end of the day, the only thing that we can control, and I've learned this the hard way several times in my life, is the only thing that we can control is what we do and how we react to it. Having upset customers for whatever reason is nothing new. My very first job working at a grocery store when I was a teenager, every day there were upset customers. And we did a pretty darn good job of giving a decent experience. I didn't know what branding the experience was back then, but we talked about customer service and how to de-escalate situations and how to treat people the right way and so on and so forth. So I get it. Yeah, things are tough. Yeah, things can be a little bit more difficult today if we're short staffed. But at the end of the day, even aside from some of the deeper concepts that I like to teach, such as service standards and core values and living your mission and vision and all of that, sometimes we just have to go to the basics, like a football game. I'm going to throw the ball, you're going to go and make an L, and you're going to catch the ball. This is one of those, which is let's keep it simple. And even if you're having a rough time, you're in a rough culture, you don't want to be there, for the love of God, at least pretend and make it seem like you care. And I'll give you two specific examples from my recent experience. I was able to actually, for the first time, I think, in a couple of years, not only have a business trip, but have a business trip and combine it with a little bit of a vacation and some pleasure. I had my wife with me. It was a conference in Vegas, was able to go and speak for a little bit. Great conference, great people, energized me, and was also able to treat my wife to Las Vegas and that particular experience and all of that came with it. She hadn't been there in quite a while. And it was interesting because Vegas is like the ultimate in experience, pretty much whatever you want, you can get. And it ran the gamut of what I saw was a great, awesome branded experience to the worst, yeah, in the ground mud crappy type of feeling, go even walking in, much less trying to patronize a place. So let me give a shout out to a couple places that are still branding the experience at a very high level. One is the Win. They did an awesome job every single moment there, and I get it, it's a high-end hotel. But I've been to some high end lately that hasn't felt like high end after the pandemic, or as we wind down the pandemic, whatever we want to call it. But the Wind did an awesome job from the time that I checked in and the lady was so sweet and so nice and accommodating and joked with me, made me feel like I wanted to be there, even though I had stood in a long line. To every experience, whether it was the dealers, whether it was the waitress by the pool or what have you. Yeah, every single experience I had in there was top notch. And I think that does speak to the service standards and the culture and the type of experience that they're creating there, not just for the customers or the attendants, not just for the customers or the hotel guests, but also for the employees. That would be my guess. Uh, but when we left the win, finding a decent experience was much harder. We went into a restaurant that was in a different casino. Was still on the strip. It wasn't too far away from the win, and we just wanted to grab a burger and sit down and watch a game. And you could tell, even before we sat down, that it was chaos. And looking at people's faces that work there, that they just didn't want to be there. Yeah, and I get it. Sometimes you get beaten down, but what does help is looking at least like you care. It took us forever to even be acknowledged, much less to get a menu and to interact with the server. And then it took forever, and then the order was wrong, and the server really didn't care and made excuses. That he didn't have a mask on, and he didn't smile once. He didn't come and check on us at all. We had to point out to him that the order was wrong, and you could tell that he just didn't care. Now, in another experience that I had on this Vegas trip, you could tell that the people were truly beaten down, that they were really busy and they were understaffed, but they at least looked like they cared. They greeted us as we walked in there. The waitress came over and says, I'll be with you in just a couple of minutes. And even with a mask on, I could tell that she was trying to smile and trying to make a connection. And that understanding of, all right, we're acknowledged, we know that they know that we're here, we're not invisible, allowed me to give that waitress and that whole staff a little bit of grace. And was it a great experience? No. Was it a decent experience? Yes. And it was a decent experience because they showed some human interaction. They let me in on this and on the problem. They let me in on the fact that, hey, we're busy, but, we know that you're here, and we want to serve you properly, even if that wasn't sincere, even if that was a lie. They made me feel as if they cared. And that goes a long way. So I know things are difficult out there. I know many retail places are understaffed, and maybe it's more difficult to brand the experience the way we used to, but at least pretend like you care, make like you care, acknowledge the customer, check on them. Even if you're bouncing around, most people, not everybody, there will still be your upset customers, but most people who are reasonable, if you make that little bit of effort and look like you care, the customer will give you a little bit of grace. They'll give you a little bit more rope to deal with the issue. I'll end with this. I already talked about the win. I said I was going to mention another organization. After we had this terrible restaurant experience that I mentioned, I suggested to my wife, let's go to Maggiano's. It's right there on the strip. I know it's a chain, but every time I go to Maggiano's, I have a positive experience, and I just want to be able to relax and get at least decent service. Not only do we get decent service, we got awesome service. So a big shout out to the Maggiano's on the strip in the Fashion Show Mall in Las Vegas. You guys did an awesome job. We interacted with at least three different people that work there. Everybody was awesome, top notch, gave us great service, very friendly, talked to us. We told stories. Now, granted, it wasn't the busiest I've ever seen a Maggiano, so they did have a little bit more time. But regardless, they made us feel like they really cared about us. And one individual, and I can't remember his name, I apologize for that. He was behind the bar on Wednesday night. I believe it was October 22nd. And in fact, let me make sure of that. Let me look at my calendar here. It was October 20th, the evening of October 20th. All the bartenders I interacted with there were awesome, but one in particular was bouncing around and he was smiling, and we asked him for bread. Says, of course, I'm going to get that for you right away. He was washing some glasses and doing some other things, and he dropped everything that he was doing. He didn't drop the glasses. He dropped everything that he was doing to make sure that he went and got us some bread. And he talked about, how happy he was to work there and, how he loved his job. And that was so refreshing. And I know, I get it. If you're in retail, a lot of times that's a means to an end. Maybe you're in school, maybe you're trying to build a career, maybe that isn't your career. But look like you care, pretend that you actually care just a little bit, and it will go a long way. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in Cool Culture Corner, how to leverage that a little bit more. But you do have control how you approach the situation. I certainly do have some empathy because I know in retail, not just restaurants, but in other retail environments, that it's tough coming back out of this, that we are a little bit short staffed, that we are in some chaos, but look like you care, make that little extra effort, and it can go a long way in branding the experience, not only for the customer, but also for you while you're working. Thanks for spending some time with me today. And here's hoping, as always, that you're branding the experience at a very high level for all those you serve. Now, a word from our sponsor, Bader Training and Consulting. BTC has recently partnered with the Success Corps to offer the Podcast for Business Success package. Launching a podcast allows your business to engage directly with your established audience, strengthening an existing bond while simultaneously developing future relationships with prospects who they may have never done business with or met otherwise. Ken Bader and Sean Douglas utilize branding, culture, and strategy to increase engagement between company and customer by launching your uniquely branded, strategically designed podcast, fostering customer relations and business growth. Ken and Sean have hosted over 1,000 podcast episodes across multiple shows and channels. You can watch live, in person, or virtually as they speak at most podcast events around the country, highlighting their expertise as icons of influence in the podcasting space. Ken and Sean not only teach the art of podcasting, but are well-known and respected practitioners, launching dozens of top-rated shows between them and their clients. Ken is also a frequent contributor to Podcast Magazine. Rather than launching your podcast on your own, wouldn't it make sense to have not one but two icons of influence teach you how? Of course it would. So harness the power of your past to launch your future with a perfectly branded podcast. Contact BTC at info@btcinc.net today with podcast package in the subject line for more information today.